In both cases, there's slavery, but the real question is how it comports itself towards the national story. Is Virginia a place that birthed the nation, or that is part of a birth of a nation?
Well, and what about the issue of tourism being linked to the Confederacy? This idea that Americans would want to not just revisit historic sites of the Civil War, but would specifically want to come to Virginia to sort of commemorate and learn more about the Confederacy itself. To me, it's interesting and it's important that Republican governors keep endorsing that idea and Democratic governors keep not endorsing that idea in Virginia. Are there either partisan or left and right differences of opinion and perception about having a romantic view of the Confederacy?
Oh, absolutely. This particular romantic, and I want to say even imagined notion of the Confederacy. And I say it's imagined because part of what the Confederate story is this idea that somehow poor white Southerners really benefited from the relationship of slavery, when in fact we know that, the vast majority of white laborers did not benefit from slavery. They found that their labor was degraded by slavery. But instead, what happens with this sort of romantic notion of the Great South is that it gets sold as a commodity, so that I can see, for example, rebel flags, Confederate flags in rural Pennsylvania and in Southern California and in downstate Illinois. Now, these are not places that were part of the Confederacy, but they are consumed by Americans across the country who want to have a sort of vision of white supremacy, a vision of this kind of romantic moment in American history where black people knew their place and women knew their place and laborers knew their place. And so this is clearly, to me, about attaching to what he perceives as a national anxiety about the ways in which women and people of color and immigrants are changing and rewriting the American story, and saying, you know what, Virginia will be a nice, safe place for those of you who want to romanticize a past where this sort of, power struggle did not exist. But of course, it's not true. It's simply a romantic notion of the Confederacy. It's not the reality of the ways in which the Confederacy degraded whites and blacks together.
Sure, it certainly puts a very romantic asterisk on it to just forget that slavery was even part of the reason that the South was fighting. He's excused this as this sort of mistake and omission after initially defending it today. But I sort of think that this defines Bob McDonnell from here on out until he gives us a reason to believe anything else important about him.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, having gone to school in Virginia, it's not an uncommon thing to pretend that the war between the states or the War of Northern Aggression was somehow not a war about slavery. It's a common narrative that emerges in textbooks and in schools. It again, I think, also highlights sort of what happened in Texas recently around the changing of the curriculum. It is critically important that as we tell our history as Americans, that we not only get our facts straight, but also, employ kind of critical reasoning skills to think on our past, because that past is with us even right now.
Melissa Harris-Lacewell, Princeton professor, MSNBC contributor, and one of the smartest people I ever talked to about anything, anytime, anywhere. Thank you so much, Melissa. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Here's what one worker at the Massey Energy coal mine in West Virginia said after an explosion at that mine killed 25 people and left 4 more missing this week. The person said, "No one will say this who works at that mine, but everyone knows it has been dangerous for years." Jeff Goodall, who's the author of Big Coal, joins us next for the latest on what's going on with the rescue effort in West Virginia. And later on, Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma gets really uncomfortably personal with me. Coming up.